Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Living Electric. Alex and I want to apologize just because we've been a little MIA the past few weeks. You know, we got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of personal things happening, jumping into the summer season, and on top of it, working full-time. It kind of prevents us, well, I don't want to say prevents us because we definitely do our best to do weekly episodes, but we've been extremely busy recently, so we appreciate you bearing with us.
Right, yeah. It's hard to keep our sanity and do 8 things at once, so sometimes things drop off, and unfortunately this is one of the first things to go sometimes, so we really enjoy doing it and want to keep continuing these chats and these podcasts, but just kind of keep that in mind, I think, over the next few months, but yeah.
And I do want to preface, too, before we dive into this episode, my dog is sleeping in the room with me right now, and the last time we did an episode with him, I didn't realize he was heavy breathing the entire time until Alex pointed it out. So if you hear any snoring or any breathing sounds, it's just my dog. It's not any weird audio clips or anything.
Yeah, nobody's coming to get you or anything, or creepily breathing over your shoulder.
Yeah, no ASMR or anything like that. This is...
Right.
So... Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. But we have some exciting news that kind of blew my mind yesterday with the EV industry. I don't know. Did you feel the same way when they announced that?
100%. I saw this kind of last minute Twitter space pop up. I got an alert about it saying Jim Farley and Elon Musk are having a Twitter space. And the topic was just accelerating EV adoption. So I'm assuming this is just going to be some generic oh yeah, what is Ford doing? What is Tesla doing? Just kind of
that's what I thought too.
Corporate BS stuff that a lot of people put out. But we got some very like you said, the opposite of what I was expecting. So,
yeah, well, we'll just rip the Band-Aid off because I'm essentially, by the time this episode goes, people are going to know. So, Ford announced that starting early next year, they will be allowing, they're partnering with Tesla, essentially, to allow access to existing Ford electric vehicles, access to the Tesla Supercharger network, utilizing an adapter. Obviously a few months ago when the Magic Dock launched, the pilot program in New York and California, it's exciting, but it was stale for a little bit. There was just no news, there was no expansion, anything like that. But the biggest news is the fact that starting in 2025, second generation Ford electric vehicles are going to have the NACS, or it's North America Charging Standard, if I remember. I kind of forgot. Okay. Which is essentially the Tesla connector, or the Tesla standard, which is huge. I mean, besides why am I drawing a blank? What's that solar panel? The solar panel. Yes, thank you. Yeah, Aptera. Besides that, this is the first company that has made an announcement like that.
Yeah.
And a company like Ford, this is massive.
I was gonna say it's a major OEM. It's not a small startup that is agile and can just quickly, we're using this port now, and it's not a huge deal. This is a massive deal. So if that is it coming across I think the context here, Ford is a 100-plus-year-old car company. Them switching and adopting something that a competitor is using is just insane. I think that's why it came as such a shock to ourselves and a lot of the industry. It's
yes.
I'm not super surprised, because then we start peeling back the layers and kind of understand why Ford is doing this, and we'll get into some of the discussions here. But the main thing, and I've seen a lot of discussion on, is I don't think Ford wants their customers to come first, and if that means that they need to switch to a different standard and give their vehicles and their drivers access to a more reliable, more robust charging network, it's clear that they're going to do that. And I think that was definitely one of the driving factors behind this, is more accessible charging, easier to use charging. We've said repeatedly, the Tesla experience is very hard to beat. And if all Ford has to do is add this port on their cars, then I think that's really the driving factor behind that decision.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I was thinking about it a lot last night after the news broke, and I'm like, I bet all these fast charging networks that don't have the NACS connector, and I'm just gonna say now that when Tesla first announced the NACS back in November, I'm still gonna call it the Tesla connector, but after this news, I'm now calling it the NACS. that proved to me that this is something, and I just have to apologize that I even doubted it back in November, but this really proved to me that this is something that's going to change the entire industry.
Right.
And
we didn't know what was going on in the background too, because they could have had discussions with Ford ahead of time before they announced that NACS connector thing. That could have almost been a teaser to be like, hey, this is out there. That's kind of almost their pitch to OEMs to be like, hey, we're building this. You have access to this now. You can build it. Reach out to us if you want to work with us. So
yes. Yeah, that's it. It has me excited. I was so giddy about this last night. I was joking with Tyler that I'm such a nerd because I'm like, oh my god, this is such the most exciting EV news I've heard in so long. Is that I just see standardization in the near future. That's what excites me about this. We're going to get away from the multiple connector types, the better user experience, hopefully more reliable charging stations.
Yep.
And I am genuinely curious to see if we're going to start seeing charging networks start implementing the NACS standard at their chargers, and not just like what EVgo did with the adapter, for the blue CHAdeMO connector to the red NACS connector.
Just like a weird jerry-rig type thing. So the biggest questions I think I have on the Ford end are what vehicles are going to get this first? Is this going to be, because they mentioned next generation vehicles. So what does that mean exactly? Does that mean just the new model year of the Ford Lightning? Does that mean new Ford vehicles altogether? And the other question I have is, people made some comments on my LinkedIn post about it. Are they going to have both CCS and Tesla ports on it, or are they going to do a complete switch to Tesla ports? So, and I could see it going both ways. I definitely see the advantage to keeping both, because they're like, hey, if you are familiar with CCS or want to keep using CCS, you can keep doing that. But it also sounds like they'll have this adapter, and there'll be a lot of different adapter options where if your car does have a Tesla port and you still want to use CCS for whatever reason, there's going to be options for that. But yeah, I'm curious which route they'll go, if you have any thoughts on that.
No, I feel the same way, because I saw some things in the Mach-E owners forum on Facebook. Yeah, there was a lot of concern that now Ford is kind of not being held back, but they're kind of at the hands of Tesla's supply chain. So they're now kind of being not held back. I'm trying to. It's early in the morning. I think you know what I'm saying. There's
almost
a lot of
pigeonholed by Tesla, because they
yes.
If Tesla changes something or updates something, it's on, Tesla could do that at a whim, kind of, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So they're kind of at their hands there. There's a lot of concern, from software, where the next charge port's going to be located. Is it, because supercharger cables they're short compared to, some things that EVgo or Electrify America. So, I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, we're starting to see more and more cars with dual charge ports. Mm-hmm. A lot of the Taycan, the new Audi Q8 e-tron, it has an optional dual port, where you can get two charging ports and so forth. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I don't see, green CCS connectors going away anytime soon. I feel like a lot of the networks have invested so much money that I don't think they're going to get rid of those connectors. And obviously you still have to support the cars that are still on the road. So, I think it'll be interesting. I mean, maybe they'll utilize... Well, then again, if it's green CCS, you still have the, green level 2 J1772 port. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I don't necessarily know if they're going to do it until the Mach-E gets a redesign, which will be due by then, because it was unveiled in 2019. Deliveries were starting in 2021. It should be due for a refresh soon. I don't know.
I've got so many thoughts. No, you're good. I'm thinking of it in real time like you are. I think with the charge port location, I can almost guarantee they're going to move it to the back left corner so that it matches Tesla vehicles. I imagine that was part of Ford and Tesla's agreement, where it's hey, you can adopt our standard. This is what we recommend for the best user experience. Is putting it on the back left so that you can use existing superchargers, not just pull through stalls, not just new stations or new designs that we're putting out. So I can almost guarantee that that's going to be the case. The other piece, and I feel like this is almost just flipping the whole charging industry on its head too, because
Oh yeah.
so much, to your point, a lot of the supply chain, a lot of the charging networks, everything has been built up, non-Tesla obviously, around CCS. So now that Ford is saying we're not going to use CCS anymore, what are these charging networks going to do?
Yeah.
And Tesla's been clear, hey, you can take the NACS connector and start designing it and putting it on your charger and it'll be fine. But we haven't seen any charger manufacturers really announce that or lean into that. So
Yeah.
I think that is going to be the next step, is what charging like hardware OEMs are going to start providing this NACS connector. And again, to your point, where is the industry going to go with CCS? Like Ford just announced they're going to switch to this. I think all it takes is maybe one or two more OEMs to be like, hey, we're also doing this.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then everybody's going to be like, oh, crap. Like, we're going to have to switch as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
And-
that's exactly how I feel. Like I see Rivian potentially being the next one announcing that they're going to go with this new standard.
Yeah.
Or that the NACS standard, which would be great. I really think that they're early on in production where they could make that switch.
right.
But I don't necessarily see like General Motors making an announcement soon. But who knows? I mean, I didn't expect Ford to make this announcement. So,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a wild world at the moment. So we'll have to get like a bingo sheet together and see what we get.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm
it's
excited to see
nuts.
where this goes, because if, at least just tracking it in my head, like if one or two more OEMs announce that, hey, we are also using the NACS connector, we've got all this federal funding coming out for NEVI that requires CCS plugs on chargers. Is that requirement going to change? Are they now going to add, like, some states haven't even released their RFPs yet, and they could easily add that in as a line item to say you also have to offer a Tesla connector. And then people are going to be scrambling because federal money and policy drives a lot of change in a lot of places, whether you like it or not. Like, that is what what drives a lot of decision making. That could definitely influence things. So it's, yeah, this, like, to your point, this industry continues to change, and it gets like, every time I'm getting bored with it, there's some new announcement or an exciting thing that happens that reels me right back in. So
I know. It's like the world's biggest soap opera. Like,
right.
yeah. It's like, am I the drama? No. But yeah, no, that I agree with you. Like, after yesterday's announcement, it kind of like, well, after last week's, like, conference that I went to, it was like rejuvenating, because it was kind of like a little stagnant for a little bit. I mean, like, there was still a lot of growth, a lot of, things, but there wasn't any like massive change that like was getting me.
Oh yeah, like a lot of companies and just the industry in general, I feel like it's been, to your point, there's been a lot of growth, but it's been growth just kind of doing the same thing we did 6 months ago or a year ago.
Yeah.
Like, nothing's been crazy impressive where it's like, this is a brand new thing now, or this is a new announcement. It's been kind of stagnant, to your point. So
Yeah. I mean, besides like some of the news that we were getting out of like China with like their EV industry, and like some of their charging standards, and I think, and someone's probably going to correct me, I think it was a BYD vehicle that could like charge. I think it was like something in like 10 minutes. Like, there was like some breakthrough with like charging speeds. I can't remember off the top of my head, but like, this was like the first big news here in North America, and I think in a long time. So yeah, it's exciting. I mean, we're still getting chargers in the ground, which is always exciting, but yeah, this was like, holy crap, like, we're actually starting to see direction and standardization where it's not just like multiple cables, connectors, and blah blah blah. Like,
right.
Yeah. There's light at the end of this tunnel.
Right.
So
one other comment I'll make before we switch to your conference is just the software side of this. So again, Ford may be kind of pigeonholed into the Tesla network, where you have to use the Tesla protocols for communicating between cars and vehicles. So what is that going to look like? Are they going to be able to build that into Ford Pass somehow, where it's like, hey, your Ford Pass payment works on Tesla Superchargers now? I'd imagine, especially with this announcement, they're trying to keep that user experience very much like front and center. So I'd imagine that's how they'll do it. But another thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're adding Tesla to the Blue Oval network.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that probably works with the Ford Pass. Like, I'm not exactly sure how that ties in, just because I don't own a Ford.
Right.
I'm trying to think of it from like the perspective of our friends that do own Mach-E's and Lightnings with how that works. So I'm not sure how that's gonna work.
And Tesla uses like
interesting.
Yeah, Tesla just uses a different communication and protocol than most people too. Like, it's somewhat proprietary. I don't think it's fully like proprietary. I'm not sure what kind of, I don't know if they use like CAN bus or Modbus or something like that. It's some kind of like industry standard communication thing, but it's not what other networks are using all the time. So that's just something to keep an eye on, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I can't wait to see where this goes. I mean,
right.
Like we've talked about in the past, I love the Mach-E, really, really enjoy the Lightning. Ford is making really great EV products.
Right.
So this just, it makes it better. It sweetens the deal, having access to the Supercharger network. So,
yeah. One other thing I just remembered too. Sorry to keep delaying.
It's a podcast.
That's right. Is the Mach-E, wasn't it like the third best-selling EV in the U.S. like the past year or something?
I think so.
Okay.
I know General Motors swooped in recently and had like some Facebook posts saying that they were like the number 2 like EVs like company or something like that recently.
But I'm talking models, like EV models. Like, is that because I thought the Model Y was number 1, Model 3 was number 2. I thought the Mach-E was in that 3 slot, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Okay.
I would have to look that up. Yeah.
But to that end, I think if the majority of new vehicles are also being sold with the NACS connector, that's again another thing that may sway the industry in general to start adopting that. So
yeah,
we'll see. It's exciting. We'll see where it all goes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I have a good feeling that we're going to have another announcement from another OEM soon. I'm curious to know
I would
who
not
it
be
is.
surprised. Yeah.
So we'll post a Living Electric bingo card somewhere, and whoever gets bingo first will send out a T-shirt or something.
Right.
That could actually be a fun giveaway.
I would. I'll let you make the bingo card since you thought of the idea.
and I'll pay for the T-shirt.
Yeah.
But, well, I want to talk about really fast the conference that I got a chance to attend last week in Houston, Texas. It felt nice to travel for the first time in like 6 months.
Oh, had it been that long?
Yeah. Last time I traveled was to the Seattle Auto Show in November. So,
oh wow, yeah,
it's been
a while.
Been quite some time. So I know you're always traveling. So, but yeah. Yeah, it was a really nice chance to get away. But the conference I went to was something that really didn't deal with vehicles. It did and it didn't. So it was really interesting to see it from the perspective of the energy sector side of things. So the conference I went to is called Charge Energy Branding Conference. And it was all about branding energy, from natural oil or, like natural gas, oil, solar, wind, nuclear, you name it. It's essentially any type of marketing and branding for energy.
Gotcha.
And it was originated in Iceland, and they are expanding it here to the U.S. This was the second year that it was here in North America, and the next one is going to be in Berlin, Germany.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I was joking with the team because most of them are from Iceland and like the UK, and I kept saying, I'm like, I don't have my passport, and they kept saying, you got to, because you got to come to Berlin.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was cool. ChargeWay is a sponsor of the conference. So we
Gotcha.
had a booth with one of our ChargeWay beacons, and it really just got a chance to talk with people who are doing incredible things in the energy sector and get a chance to tie in how ChargeWay is rebranding electric fuel so it's easier for drivers to understand, and how we partner with utilities to help dealerships sell more electric vehicles and kind of tie the auto sector to the energy sector.
Right. Right.
So it was just incredible. I got to meet the ambassador to the U.S. or the ambassador of Iceland to the United States, which is really cool.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, got a chance to joke with her that we were going to share notes at the end of the conference just because there was so much stuff going on.
That's fun.
So that was really exciting. And then one of the most touching moments is that I got to meet the head of communications for Ukraine's main utility company.
Oh, wow.
Her name is Diana. I can't remember her last name off the top of my head, but essentially her job was to work with her team, during this war to help people within their service territory understand what's happening and essentially keeping the lights on
Wow.
for Ukraine citizens. And that, yeah, this was a conference that just one rejuvenated me for
Right.
everything that's happening in our industry.
Yeah.
But it also touched me deeply that I was a part of this. So
Yeah.
just incredible people were at this conference.
I was going to say, yeah,
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think you have problems, or you have major stuff going on in your life, and you're like, it could be much worse, and I could be way more stressed out or have a lot bigger problems to deal with.
Yes.
So I do not envy people working on on stuff like that. I mean, but
Yeah.
shouts out to them, honestly. I mean, that's not an easy job. So
No, it was just incredibly humbling to
Right.
be able to
Right.
listen to her speak and experience everything that she's doing to help her country. And
Right.
yeah, it was amazing. And
Wow.
yeah, and then so I got to meet some of the other vendors. There's a company called Escalent. I can't remember where their headquarters is. I think it's based out of Detroit, but they have employees all around the world, and they do EV surveys for manufacturers, companies, and so forth. But Casey, one of the head data scientists for Escalent, and I might have gotten his title incorrect, but I've heard him speak a few times before, and he actually did a campside discussion with Matt Teskey, my
nice.
boss and CEO from Chargeway.
Yeah.
And they were talking about rebranding, electric fuel and help making it easier for drivers to understand. And Escalent is fascinating. I actually think we should try to get somebody from their team on our podcast, because the amount of surveys they do goes way deeper than some of the other surveys that we've talked about, and really gets a good understanding of how people would actually utilize electric, vehicles, charging, and so forth.
Gotcha.
But what was really interesting is that part of that slide that Matt and Casey did, they have you seen that visual, the Chargeway visual, where it's it shows the connectors and it explains what our colors are? It's
Yeah.
1 through 7. So they actually did a version of that, but for all the terminology that the EV industry is using and what that falls into with a spectrum of kilowatts. And
Interesting.
it's just nuts, because they only showed 4 examples, Electrify America with their Rapid, Ultra, Hyper, and where that fell, and then there was another company that was using Hyper and Extreme and another terminology, and then you have
Jeez.
Tesla that uses urban supercharging, V2 supercharging, V3 supercharging, and it's just all these terminology and what that means for drivers. And Escalent actually did a survey based on Hyper Ultra, the Chargeway numbers 6 and 7, and 350 kilowatt and 150 kilowatt. And essentially the survey was basically, stating well, how do you know that this is a faster charge? What does this number mean for you? And it was really funny because obviously Ultra and Hyper had the lowest amount of scores. It was 15% of people understood that was a faster charge for either one of those.
Wow.
And then Chargeway, the 6 and the 7, people understood that the 7 was a higher number. It was 84% of people understood that means it would be a faster charge versus the 6. And then the 350 kilowatt had a 92% understanding, and then the 150 had a drastically smaller difference for what that means for people.
Gotcha.
And what really impressed me about that survey is that it really showed how Chargeway's colors and numbers fit into the better understanding of how people understand, faster charging.
Right.
But it really just proved that there's still a lot that needs to be done in terms of marketing for EV charging.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I've even found recently, talking with customers and stuff, people just will refer to fast chargers as superchargers just colloquially. They're this is a supercharger. And it's no, that's a Tesla branded, or not Tesla branded, but That's Tesla's term for a fast charger.
Yes.
Most other things are just fast chargers or whatever. To your point, some are called ultra, hyper, or whatever, super fast,
Extreme.
extreme. Just all these kind of random terms that are thrown around. There's not a great, again, standardization of what these things are. So
yes, yeah. Yeah, and that was that was really interesting talking to professionals in the energy sector, because a lot of them drive EVs. The majority of people I talked with drove Teslas. So they either weren't like fully aware that there was like as many networks out there, or like the different connector types, and it was really interesting hearing their perspective of how energy works for them versus just simply being part of like, well, I don't want to say simply because it's not, but being part of like the EV industry and just like understanding how vehicles work versus from a utility side or like an energy producer.
Right.
Yeah, it was many fascinating conversations were had.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But
That's cool.
yeah, it was pretty cool. And then to kind of get away from the conference for a second, Matt rented a Model 3 from Hertz. When we were down there, and we ended up going to the Houston Space Museum. It's called like the Johnson Space Center.
Nice.
And people are going to be like, oh, it's not just called the Johnson Space Center. It's like a famous like NASA facility.
Yeah.
And it was incredible seeing the Falcon 9 rocket in person and getting a chance to stand by it and actually like touch it. Like, it just blew my mind. But yeah, it was really, really cool to get a chance to see all that innovation down in Texas.
Right.
I think a lot of people forget that Texas has a lot of cool things, but it's...
Yeah, it's like it's a hub for a lot of the space stuff specifically,
Huge.
Right? They do a ton of launches from there and all kinds of stuff. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I was joking with Matt that we should have just taken the whole day and drove down to Starbase, in Boca Chica, and just like get a photo with the sign and drive back. Like
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, it was sorry, that was a lot of rambling, but yeah.
No, it's good hearing about it. Sounds like a fun trip. So
yeah, absolutely. I'll say, I'm not sure, if a lot of our listeners are mainly just in the EV industry or if there's some people who work in the energy sector. If you get a chance to check out the Charge Energy Branding Conference, I believe their website is just chargeenergy.com, but you can search Charge Energy Branding and that should pull up the conference information.
Right.
But just an incredible amount of talented and intelligent people who are doing incredible things. So I just I don't know. Most conferences don't like really touch me like this one did, but yeah, I walked away feeling like, I was involved with that. So
that's awesome.
It was cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, but that's my Houston, Texas story. Traffic was nuts. I'll just say that.
It's funny. All right. So. Anything else you want to cover? I think we're good.
No. Yeah, I think we're good. And
awesome.
Just want to circle back from beginning of the episode. We'll definitely do our best to continue doing weekly new episodes. We are moving in a few weeks, so the next few weeks are going to be nuts for me. So we'll definitely do our best.
Yep. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Good seeing or talking at everybody again. And we'll catch you in the next episode.